Sure. Below is part one kern of your story, around 1,500 words, written in simple, natural English, with an emotional, human-centered tone, no headings, no violence, and no AI-like phrasing. It's designed to feel authentic and captivating for a YouTube storytelling audience. The morning sun had just begun to rise over the small town, brushing the rooftops with a pale orange glow. The streets were quiet except for the sound of footsteps, two small figures walking hand in hand down the uneven road. Their dresses were old and faded, and their shoes were so worn that their toes peeked through the ends. They were twin sisters, no more than 12 years old, their faces pale but full of determination. They walked toward the little bakery at the corner of the street, the one that always smelled of fresh bread and warm sugar. Every morning they stopped there not to buy much, because they rarely had enough money, but just to stand for a moment, breathing in the smell of hope that came from those golden loaves behind the glass. The bakery was run by a middle-aged man who had worked hard all his life. He wasn't a bad man. He was just tired. Life hadn't been easy for him either. That morning he was kneading dough behind the counter, humming softly when he heard the soft creak of the door. He looked up and saw the twins standing there. They smiled nervously, clutching a few small coins between their fingers. "Good morning," one of them said quietly. "Sir, could we please have one loaf of bread?" "Just the small one." The baker wiped his hands on his apron and walked closer. He glanced at the coins in the girl's palm. It wasn't enough. Not even half the price of the smallest loaf. "You don't have enough, girls," he said kindly but firmly. "I'm sorry, but I can't sell it for that." The other sister stepped forward, her voice even softer. "Please, sir. Our mother is sick. We haven't eaten since yesterday. We promise we'll pay you later, maybe tomorrow, please." The baker frowned, looking down at their hopeful eyes. He had let them take bread before, and they had always tried to pay back, sometimes with coins, sometimes with eggs or small flowers from the field. But business had been slow lately. His rent was late, and the supplier had already warned him about unpaid bills. He sighed and shook his head. "I'm sorry, I can't. If I give it to you, others will want the same." "I can't keep doing that." The twins' faces fell. One of them bit her lip, fighting back tears. They didn't want to beg. They had promised their mother they wouldn't. They turned to leave quietly, but just then, one of them looked back at the loaves stacked on the shelf, warm, golden, and shining with a thin crust. Her stomach growled, and she looked down quickly, embarrassed. The baker heard it. For a moment, he wanted to change his mind, but his pride held him still. He told himself he had done enough charity already. As the girls stepped outside, the bell on the bakery door jingled softly. At a small table near the window sat a man in a neat coat, sipping his morning coffee. He had been there the whole time, reading a newspaper, but his eyes had drifted to the girls as soon as they entered. He saw their nervous smiles, their empty hands, and the quiet way they tried to thank the baker even after being turned away. He wasn't just any man. He was one of the wealthiest businessmen in town, though he rarely looked it. He preferred quiet corners and simple routines. That morning, something about the scene before him stirred a memory, something he hadn't thought about in years. He watched as the twins walked slowly down the street, still holding hands, their heads bowed. For a moment, he stared at the bakery door, then looked at the baker, who was back to his work, pretending not to notice how heavy the air had become. The man set down his coffee cup and folded the newspaper. "Excuse me," he said gently, approaching the counter. "Those girls who just left, how much is the bread they wanted?" The baker looked up, surprised. "Oh, that? It's not much, sir. Just a small loaf." "Then please," the man said, pulling out his wallet, "add it to my bill, and next time they come, give them what they need. I'll take care of it." The baker blinked, not sure what to say. He nodded slowly, muttering, "Of course, sir. I'll do that," but the man didn't leave. He lingered for a moment longer, gazing out the window where the twins had disappeared. There was something about their faces, the quiet strength, the way they leaned on each other, that reminded him of his own childhood. He remembered a time when he and his younger brother had gone hungry too, when they had walked through streets hoping someone might spare them a meal. He had made a promise back then that if he ever found success, he would help children like them. But as the years passed and his business grew, he had forgotten what that promise felt like. Until now. Outside, the twins walked toward home, the dust rising around their bare feet. The sun had climbed higher, warming their skin, but the hunger in their stomachs ached more than ever. "Maybe tomorrow," one whispered. "Maybe the baker will let us pay later then." The other nodded, though she didn't sound convinced. "Mama will be hungry," she said softly. They reached a small path that led to a cluster of old houses near the fields. Most of the homes were falling apart, roofs patched with tin, windows covered with cardboard. Their own house stood at the very end, small and crooked, with peeling paint and a squeaky door. Inside, the air was still and heavy. Their mother lay on a thin mattress in the corner, her face pale and her breathing slow. When she saw her daughters, she smiled weakly. "Did you get the bread, my loves?" she asked. The twins exchanged a quick look. "Not yet, Mama," one said softly. "The baker said we can come tomorrow. He'll let us pay then." Their mother nodded, though she understood what that really meant. She reached out a trembling hand and brushed their hair gently. "It's all right," she whispered. "We still have hope, don't we?" "Yes, Mama," they said together. "We do." Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the smell of baked bread from the town. The girls sat beside their mother, trying to ignore the hunger that twisted inside them. Back at the bakery, the man finished his coffee and prepared to leave. As he stepped out, he looked once more down the road where the twins had gone. He didn't know their names, their story, or where they lived, but he couldn't shake the image of their small faces so full of quiet courage. He walked slowly, thinking. He had meetings to attend, contracts to sign, and people waiting for him at his office. But for the first time in years, none of that seemed to matter much. As he reached his car, he looked up at the sky, the same pale orange that had started the morning. He smiled faintly, as if remembering something precious and forgotten. Some promises, he thought, are meant to be kept, even if it takes a lifetime to remember them. He got into his car and drove away, not knowing that this simple moment, a loaf of bread, a pair of hungry twins, and a kind heart, would soon change the lives of everyone involved. And far down the road, the twins, unaware of the stranger who had just taken notice of them, sat by their mother's side, whispering stories to make her smile. They spoke of dreams, of growing up, of working hard, of having enough food one day so no one in their family would ever go hungry again. They didn't know it yet, but life was quietly turning in their favor. The man who had watched them walk away was already thinking of how to find them again. He didn't see them as charity. He saw them as a reflection of the boy he once was, hungry, forgotten, but full of hope. As night fell over the little town, the bakery lights dimmed, and the smell of bread faded into the cool air. The streets emptied, but somewhere in the quiet corners of the city, kindness had begun to move. Slow, steady, and unstoppable. It had started with two small girls asking for bread. But it would end with something far greater than anyone could imagine. Would you like me to format this into a Word docs? Document ready for upload or voice narration, like a YouTube story script. I can also adjust the tone, more Nike emotional and cinematic, or Yini calm and documentary style, depending on your channel's style. Of course. Below is part 2 of your story. About 1,500 words written in simple natural English with a warm human-centered tone and no violence or sensitive content. It flows naturally from part 1 and is designed to keep the audience emotionally engaged throughout. The next morning came quietly. The sun rose behind thin clouds, painting the town in shades of pale gold. People were starting their day, sweeping their doorsteps, opening small shops, greeting each other with sleepy smiles. The smell of freshly baked bread once again filled the air, drifting from the little bakery on the corner. Inside the bakery, the baker worked as he always did, hands busy, mind half elsewhere. He had been thinking about the twin sisters all night. Their faces, their soft voices asking politely if they could pay later. It had stayed with him longer than he expected. He tried to shake off the feeling, telling himself that life was hard for everyone and he couldn't feed the whole town. Still, a quiet uneasiness sat heavy in his chest. The man who had been sitting in the corner the day before, the one who had paid for the girl's bread, walked in again that morning. His presence brought a certain calm with it. He was dressed neatly but not in a showy way. He had kind eyes, and there was something thoughtful about the way he moved. He greeted the baker with a polite nod. Good morning, he said softly. Do you remember those two little girls from yesterday? The baker looked up quickly. Yes, sir. I remember. Did they come back? The man asked. Not yet, the baker said, shaking his head. But I think they will. They always come early. The man nodded and took a seat by the same window as before. He ordered his usual coffee and a small roll but seemed distracted, his gaze fixed on the door. After a few minutes, the bell above the door jingled, and there they were, the twin sisters. Their faces brightened for a moment when they saw the bread on the shelves, but their steps slowed as they remembered yesterday's disappointment. They walked up to the counter, holding each other's hands tightly. Good morning, sir, one of them said softly. Could we please have a small loaf again? We can bring the money soon. Our mother will be better soon and then she'll work again. The baker looked at them, hesitated, and then smiled gently. Don't worry about that today, he said. Take what you need. It's already paid for. The girls looked at each other, surprised. Paid, one whispered. By who? The baker nodded toward the man sitting near the window. The twins turned their heads and saw him, the quiet stranger sipping coffee, watching them kindly. He smiled, lifting a hand slightly as if to say hello. The girls froze, unsure of what to do. They whispered a quick thank you to the baker and then, shyly, walked toward the man. Sir, one said in a small voice, thank you for paying for our bread. We don't know you, but you helped us. The man smiled warmly. You don't need to thank me, he said gently. Everyone needs a little help sometimes. I'm just glad you'll have something to eat. The girls smiled, holding the loaf carefully as if it were something precious. Then one of them said, Our mother will be happy. She always says there are kind people in the world even when we can't see them. The man's eyes softened. Your mother sounds like a wise woman. She's sick, the other twin said quickly. But she's getting better. We take care of her. The man nodded slowly, something thoughtful crossing his face. You must love her very much. We do, they said together. She's all we have. The man didn't say anything for a moment. He just looked at them. Two small girls with such strength in their eyes standing there with a loaf of bread clutched between them. Then he said quietly, Would it be all right if I visited your mother? I'd like to see if there's any way I can help. The twins exchanged a look. People rarely offered to visit their home. They weren't used to kindness that went beyond small gestures. Still, they felt they could trust this man. There was something gentle about the way he spoke, something that reminded them of their father. Of course, one of them said after a moment. We live near the fields past the old well. It's the small house at the end. The man nodded. Thank you, he said. I'll come by later today. They thanked him again and hurried off, smiling as they left. The man watched them disappear down the road, the bread tucked safely in their arms. When he turned back to the baker, the man sighed softly. They're good children, he said. They are, the baker agreed. Their mother has been sick for a while. People around here help when they can, but times are hard. They've been through a lot. The man nodded thoughtfully. I can see that. He finished his coffee, paid for it, and left the bakery. But instead of heading to his office as usual, he began walking in the direction the girls had gone. The air was fresh, the sky a soft blue, and he found himself thinking of his own childhood again, of days when he and his younger brother had gone hungry, too proud to ask for help. He remembered the one kind neighbor who had given them food when no one else would. That small act of kindness had changed everything for him. He had promised himself that if he ever had the chance, he would do the same for someone else. Now it seemed that chance had come. He followed the road out of town, past the last row of shops until the houses grew smaller and more worn. Finally, he saw the one the girls had described, a tiny home with peeling paint and a broken fence. He hesitated for a moment, then knocked gently on the door. After a moment, the door creaked open. One of the twins peeked out, her eyes lighting up when she saw him. You came, she said happily. Of course, he said, smiling. May I come in? She nodded and opened the door wider. Inside, the house was clean but bare. A small table stood near the window, and in the corner, on a thin mattress, lay their mother. She was frail, her face pale, but her eyes were kind. When she saw the man, she struggled to sit up. Good afternoon, she said softly. Please forgive the mess. We don't get many visitors. There's nothing to forgive, the man said gently, stepping closer. Your daughters told me you weren't feeling well. I wanted to see if I could help. The woman smiled weakly. You've already helped. They told me you paid for their bread. Thank you for your kindness, sir. The man looked at the girls, then back at their mother. You've raised good children, he said. They're polite, brave, and full of love. You should be proud. Tears filled the woman's eyes. They are my whole world, she whispered. Since their father passed, they've taken care of me more than I've cared for them. The room fell silent for a moment. The man felt a lump in his throat. He didn't want to intrude, but he also couldn't walk away. If it's all right, he said quietly. I'd like to arrange for a doctor to visit, and maybe send some groceries and medicine. You shouldn't have to worry about food. The woman's eyes widened. Sir, that's too much. We can't repay you, he smiled softly. I'm not asking for anything in return. Sometimes it's enough to help because it's the right thing to do. The twins stood beside their mother, smiling shyly. Thank you, one of them said. Mama always says good people bring light into dark places. The man's eyes glistened, though he quickly looked away, pretending to study the cracked wall. Your mother is a very wise woman, he said again. He stayed a while longer talking with them, listening to their stories, how their father had worked at the factory before falling ill, how their mother used to sew clothes for neighbors, and how the girls had been trying to sell flowers by the road to earn a little money. Their hope, despite everything, touched him deeply. Before leaving, he promised to return soon. He shook the woman's hand gently and said, You rest now. I'll make sure help comes your way. As he stepped outside, the twins followed him to the gate. Will we see you again? One of them asked. Very soon, he said with a smile. And next time I'll bring something special for both of you. They grinned, waving as he walked away. The man walked back toward town slowly, his heart full and heavy at the same time. He had seen real struggle before, but something about this family made him feel personally connected. He couldn't explain it, it just felt like fate had led him there. By the time he reached the bakery again, he had already made up his mind. He called his assistant and asked her to arrange for a delivery, food, medicine, and warm blankets, to be sent to the small house near the fields. He wanted everything to arrive by evening. That night, as the twins and their mother sat around the small table, there was a knock at the door. Outside stood a man with several boxes, bread, fruit, milk, and even a few small treats. For you, the man said, smiling. A gift from someone who cares, the girls gasped, and their mother covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. In the distance, under the soft glow of the street lamps, the quiet stranger watched for a moment before walking away. He didn't need thanks or recognition. Seeing their joy was enough. For the first time in a long while, he felt something deep and pure, the peace that comes when a person remembers what truly matters. And that night, as the twins shared warm bread with their mother, laughter filled the little house, the kind of laughter that sounds like hope coming back to life. Would you like me to now format this story into a Word, docs.file so it's ready for narration or upload? I can also match the formatting to your MO Part 1 document style, e.g., line spacing, paragraph breaks, and tone, if you'd like consistency. Of course. Below is Part 3 of your story, around 1,500 words written in simple, natural English, and continuing smoothly from Part 2. It's warm, emotional, and fully human-centered, perfect for YouTube narration and safe under platform policies. The days that followed were brighter than before. For the first time in months, the small house near the fields was filled with food, laughter, and hope. The twins woke up early every morning to help their mother eat a little breakfast before heading outside to wash clothes and sweep the small yard. The smell of warm bread and fresh milk still felt like a dream to them. Every evening, the girls waited by the gate, hoping the kind man who helped them would visit again. They didn't even know his name, but they talked about him often. To them, he was like a guardian sent by fate, someone who had appeared just when everything seemed lost. Their mother often said, "Good hearts always find each other. Maybe the kindness we once gave to others came back through him." The twins liked to believe that. They had seen so much hardship that even a little kindness felt like sunshine after a storm. One afternoon, as they were folding laundry in the yard, they saw the familiar figure walking down the path. He wore the same simple coat and carried a small bag in his hand. The girls ran to the gate, smiling widely. "You came back," one of them said, almost breathless with joy. "I promised I would," the man said with a kind smile. "And I don't break promises." Their mother came to the doorway, her eyes lighting up when she saw him. She was standing a little stronger now, her face no longer as pale as before. "Please come in, sir," she said warmly. "You've done so much already, but seeing you again brings more comfort than you can imagine." He stepped inside and handed her the small bag. "There are some medicines and fruit in here," he said gently. "I spoke to a doctor who will visit you tomorrow. You shouldn't have to fight this alone." Tears filled the woman's eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. "You're too kind," she whispered. "We don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," he said softly. "Just focus on getting better. That will be thanks enough." The twins eagerly showed him the small garden they had started behind the house. A few tomato plants, some herbs, and a little patch of flowers they had found growing wild near the road. "It's beautiful," he said, admiring their effort. "You two have a good eye for life. You find beauty where others might not look." The girls beamed. "We want to make the house look happy," one said. "When Mama feels sad, we tell her to look at the flowers." The man smiled at their words. "That's very wise of you," he said. "You remind me of someone I once knew." He sat with them for a while, listening to their stories. How they used to go to school before their mother got sick. How they helped neighbors carry water, and how they dreamed of going back one day. "Do you miss school?" he asked gently. "Every day," one of them said. "We used to like writing stories. Our teacher said we were good at it." "Then you must never stop learning," he said with a warm tone. "Even if you can't go to school right now, keep reading, keep writing, keep dreaming. Knowledge is something no one can take away from you." The girls nodded, their faces glowing with hope. They had never had anyone speak to them like that before. As the sun began to set, the man rose to leave. But before he did, he looked around the small room once more. The old furniture, the cracked walls, the worn-out curtains, and made a silent promise to himself. He would not let this family struggle again. That night, as he drove home, memories of his own past came rushing back. He remembered being a child, sitting in a cold room with his younger brother sharing a single piece of bread. He remembered the stranger who had once knocked on their door and brought them food. That one act of kindness had changed everything. It had given him the strength to keep going, to work harder, to build a better life. Now, he finally understood what that stranger must have felt, the quiet joy of helping someone who truly needed it. The next morning, he called one of his assistants and asked her to find out about the girls' school. "See what it takes to get them enrolled again," he said. "They deserve an education. They deserve a chance." His assistant sounded surprised. "Are they family, sir?" she asked. He paused. "In a way, yes," he said softly. "They remind me of my own." Later that day, the doctor he had arranged visited the small house. The mother was weak but recovering slowly. The twins helped bring water and blankets, doing everything the doctor asked. When he left, he told them that with proper rest and good food, their mother would soon be strong again. The girls hugged each other tightly, relief washing over them. "We'll tell him when he comes back," one said with a smile. "He'll be so happy to know Mama is getting better." Meanwhile, the man was busy making quiet arrangements behind the scenes. He contacted a few friends who worked with local charities, ensuring that the family would receive monthly supplies and medical support. He even made sure the baker would deliver fresh bread to their home every few days, paid in advance for months. But he didn't tell the family all of this. He didn't want them to feel like they owed him anything. He just wanted them to live peacefully with dignity. A few days later, he returned again. The twins ran out to greet him as usual, but this time they noticed the car that followed him. Inside were boxes, books, clothes, and a small radio. "What's all this?" the mother asked, surprised. The man smiled gently. "Just some things I thought you might need. And there are books for the girls. I heard they love to read." The twins' eyes lit up as they opened the boxes. Inside were colorful storybooks, notebooks, pencils, and even a small dictionary. "We've never had books like these before," one of them said in awe. "Now you do," he said, smiling. "Use them well. Learn everything you can. One day these books might open doors you can't even imagine yet." The mother's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of happiness. "You've given us more than we could ever ask for," she said softly. The man shook his head. "I haven't given you anything you didn't already deserve," he said. "You have goodness, courage, and hope. You just needed someone to remind you how strong you already are." They spent the afternoon talking and laughing. The girls read small passages from the new books, their voices full of excitement. Their mother smiled as she watched them, her heart swelling with gratitude. Before he left, the man handed the mother a small envelope. "Please don't refuse this," he said gently. "It's for anything you might need, medicines, clothes, or repairs for the house." The woman hesitated, but his eyes were kind and steady. She took the envelope with shaking hands. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "Just keep believing in kindness," he said softly.
"And one day, when you meet someone who needs help, you'll do the same."
That's how goodness continues. As he walked away, the twins ran after him. "Will you come back again?" they asked. He smiled over his shoulder. "Yes," he said. "I still want to hear how your garden grows." They waved until he disappeared down the road, then ran back to show their mother the books again. The house, once filled with silence and worry, now echoed with laughter and the sound of turning pages. That night, the mother sat by the small window watching the stars. Her heart was full. For the first time in years, she felt truly safe. She didn't know why the man had chosen to help them, but she believed there was a reason, perhaps a purpose that went beyond money or chance. Meanwhile, in his quiet home across town, the man sat by his desk, looking out at the same stars. He thought about the twins and their mother, about how fate had brought them into his path. He didn't see himself as their savior. He saw them as a reminder that even in a busy, cold world, there were still hearts worth fighting for. He opened a small notebook and wrote something on the last page, a message to himself. Never forget where you came from, and never stop giving where it matters. Then he closed the book and smiled. In that small town, under the same sky, two worlds had quietly connected, one of wealth and one of struggle. But between them stood something greater than both, kindness, pure and simple. And as the twins drifted to sleep that night, their dreams were filled with hope, not just for food or comfort, but for the promise of a better tomorrow. They didn't know it yet, but the man had already planned something far bigger for their future, something that would soon change their lives forever. Would you like me to create this as a one-word docs? Thursien formatted like a YouTube storytelling script. Clean paragraphs. Easy reading for voice narration. I can match the exact layout and tone used in your Part 1 and 2 documents, of course. Below is a Part 4 of your story, around 1,500 words. Written in a simple, heartfelt English, it's with about natural, human tone. It continues smoothly from Part 3, keeping the story emotional, uplifting, and engaging for a YouTube audience. Days passed peacefully after the kind man's visit. The little house by the fields no longer felt cold or forgotten. The garden was growing. The smell of fresh bread filled the air each morning, and laughter often echoed through the open windows. The twins had started reading every evening, their voices bright with excitement as they took turns reading from the new storybooks the man had brought them. Their mother was getting stronger too. The medicine and the good food were helping her recover faster than anyone expected. She could now walk around the house and even sit outside on the small wooden chair while the girls played nearby. Every time she saw them smile, she whispered a quiet prayer for the stranger who had changed their lives. The twins never stopped talking about him. They wondered who he really was and why he cared so much for them when he hardly knew them. Sometimes they thought maybe he was someone sent by their late father, like a guardian who had been watching over them all along. One afternoon, as they were watering their little plants, a familiar car stopped near the gate. The girls ran toward it, waving happily. The man stepped out with his usual calm smile, carrying a small box in his hands. "You came back," one of them said joyfully. "I told you I'd check on the garden," he said kindly, looking around. "It's grown beautifully," the twins laughed. "We talked to the plants," one said proudly. "Mama says they listen." "Your mother is right," the man said softly. "Everything that's cared for grows better. Plants, people, even hearts." Their mother came out to greet him, smiling warmly. "You're always welcome here, sir," she said. "Please come in and sit." The girls were just about to make some tea. He followed her inside, noticing how much brighter the home looked now. There were small decorations made by the girls, colorful drawings on the wall, and the faint sound of music playing from the small radio he had brought. "I see you've been keeping busy," he said. "Yes," the mother replied. "I'm feeling stronger every day. I've even started sewing again. I can't thank you enough for everything you've done." He waved his hand gently. You don't need to thank me. Just seeing you all happy is enough. They shared tea together while the twins showed him the notebooks where they had written small stories. Some were about animals, others about dreams. And one was about a kind stranger who brought hope to a poor family. The man read their stories slowly, smiling at each page. You two have a gift, he said sincerely. You see the world with open hearts. Don't ever lose that. The twins blushed, proud and shy at the same time. We'll write more, one said quickly. Maybe one day we can show you again. I'd like that very much, he said. As they talked, the mother asked him quietly, Why do you do so much for us? There must be others who need help too. He looked at her thoughtfully. Because I once needed help too, he said softly. When I was young, my brother and I had nothing. One kind person helped us, and that changed everything. I promised myself that if I ever had the chance, I'd do the same for someone else. The room fell silent. The mother looked at him with deep respect. Then you've kept that promise, she said gently. He smiled faintly. Yes, but I think it's more than that. Meeting you all reminded me of what really matters in life. After a while, he stood up. I have something important to tell you, he said. I've spoken to the local school. The twins can start attending again next week. Everything is arranged, books, uniforms, fees. You don't have to worry about anything. The twins froze for a moment, not sure if they had heard correctly. We can go back to school? One whispered. Yes, he said, smiling warmly. You belong there. You're bright, curious, and full of dreams. You deserve a chance to learn. The girls squealed with joy, hugging each other tightly. Their mother covered her mouth, tears of happiness streaming down her face. You've given my children their future, she said in a trembling voice. The man shook his head gently. They're giving it to themselves. I'm just opening the door. The twins ran to get their old school bags, which had been tucked away under the bed for months. They showed him their pencils and notebooks, some torn, some half-used. We'll take care of everything, one of them said eagerly. We'll study hard, and one day we'll make you proud, he smiled. You already have. That evening, after he left, the little house was filled with excitement. The girls couldn't stop talking about going back to school, about the friends they'd see, the lessons they'd learn, and the stories they'd write. Their mother sat by the window, her heart overflowing with gratitude. In another part of town, the man sat quietly in his study. He had spent years building businesses, attending meetings, and earning success, but none of it had ever brought him the peace he now felt. Helping that small family had given him something no amount of wealth ever could, a sense of meaning. The next morning, he received a call from his assistant confirming that everything was ready for the girls' school admission. Their names were registered and the supplies had been delivered. Thank you, he said before ending the call. For a long moment, he sat there staring out the window, thinking about how strange life could be. How a single moment, a simple act of kindness could change so many lives. That week, when the twins went to school, the entire neighborhood seemed to notice their joy. They walked hand in hand, wearing clean uniforms and carrying new books. The baker who saw them pass his shop smiled proudly. He had heard from others what the man had done for the family. It made him look at his own life differently. When the man visited again later that week, he found the girls sitting at the table doing homework. They looked up at him and grinned. We had our first day, one said. It was amazing. Everyone was so happy to see us. That's wonderful, he said, pulling up a chair. Tell me everything. They told him about their teachers, their classmates, and even the new subjects they were learning. He listened intently, smiling as they spoke, his eyes full of pride. You're going to do great things, he said quietly. I can already tell. The mother nodded from across the room. They will, she said softly. And it's because someone believed in them. The man looked at her kindly. Sometimes all a person needs is for someone to believe they can. Over the next few weeks, their bond grew even stronger. He visited often, bringing small gifts, not expensive ones, but things that showed thought. Notebooks, seeds for the garden, even a small clock so the girls could wake up on time for school. The house, once silent and lonely, was now full of life. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned golden, the mother sat outside with him while the twins played nearby. You've given us so much, she said quietly. I wish there was a way to repay your kindness. He shook his head. There's no debt between us. Just promise me one thing. When the time comes, help someone else. Even a small act can change a life. She nodded, smiling softly. I promise." As the light faded and the stars appeared, he looked at the twins laughing in the yard. Something inside him felt peaceful, like a part of his past had finally healed. Before leaving that night, he told them, "I'll be traveling soon for some work, but I'll return before the school holidays. Take care of each other until then." The girls promised they would. They waved until his car disappeared down the road, their hearts full of gratitude. That night, as they sat together eating dinner, the mother said quietly, "We may not have much, but we have something money can't buy. Kindness that found its way to us." The twins nodded, smiling. "When we grow up," one said, "we'll help others too. Just like he helped us," the other added. "We'll make him proud." The mother reached out, holding their hands. "You already do," she said softly. The moon rose high and the little house glowed under its light. Inside, 3 hearts beat with hope and peace. They didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but they knew they were no longer alone in the world. And somewhere far away, the man sat by his hotel window thinking of them. He thought about how strange life was, how he had once chased success to fill an emptiness he couldn't name, and how that emptiness disappeared the moment he gave something away. He smiled to himself, whispering, "Maybe this is what real wealth looks like." Then he closed his eyes, feeling a quiet warmth spread through his heart, the warmth of knowing that his kindness had not just fed a hungry family, but had planted something deeper: faith, hope, and love that would grow for years to come. Would you like me to create? Part 4 is a formatted Word document for narration or upload, with the same layout and tone as your previous parts. I can also prepare Part 5 and next to complete the full story series if you'd like. Of course, below is a Part 5 times of your story, the final part, written in simple, heartfelt English and with a human, emotional tone that flows naturally for storytelling or YouTube narration. It stays clean, wholesome, and deeply engaging throughout. Years passed quietly after that special day when the man promised to return. The twins grew taller, wiser, and full of dreams. Life had changed for them in ways they could never have imagined. Their small home by the fields was now filled with laughter, books, and the smell of freshly baked bread. The mother had recovered completely and had even started sewing clothes for people in the town. Every morning the twins woke up early for school, wearing their neatly ironed uniforms. They loved learning new things and helping their classmates. The teachers often praised them for their kindness and honesty. Everyone in the school knew their story, how a kind stranger had helped them when they had nothing, but the twins never bragged about it. They simply smiled and said, "We were lucky to meet someone good." Even though they hadn't seen the man for a long time, they often talked about him. Sometimes at night when the lamps were dim, they would sit near the window and look at the stars, wondering where he was. They missed his calm voice, his gentle smile, and the warmth he brought into their lives. One winter morning, while helping their mother prepare breakfast, one of the twins noticed a letter slipped under the door. It was written on fine paper with elegant handwriting. The mother opened it carefully. Her hands trembled slightly as she read it aloud. "Dear family, I hope this letter finds you well. I have been away for a while, traveling for work, but I have never forgotten you. I will be visiting the town soon. There is something I wish to show you, something important. Please meet me at the old bakery this Sunday morning. With warm regards, your friend." The girls jumped with joy. "He's coming back!" they shouted together. Their mother's eyes filled with tears of happiness. The days leading up to Sunday felt long. The girls could hardly sleep.